This is note taker 28 on reptiles and birds. Reptiles are our last group of cold-blooded vertebrates. Cold-blooded means that they cannot make internal body heat, so they must rely on their surroundings to control their temperature. They will go out into the sun and bask on a rock to warm up, and they'll either get into the shade or sometimes into the water to cool down. Now, with these cold-blooded vertebrates, reptiles are going to have lungs, scaly skin, and they're also going to have a special type of egg. Members of this group will be snakes, lizards, turtles, crocodiles, alligators, and then there's a special little guy called a tuatara. Now, reptiles are going to have skin that's completely covered by tough, dry scales. These scales are made out of the same material as your fingernails or your hair. They're dead flattened cells. And these scales are going to form a waterproof barrier covering the body, which will actually help the reptile from drying out. Because the skin, or the scales in the skin, are so thick, they are going to have to rely solely on lungs to be able to breathe. It's not like our amphibians where we could have a little bit of gas exchange occurring through the skin. With the reptiles, the skin and the scales are too thick for that to occur. So in addition to being a waterproof barrier, it does limit the reptiles to respiration only by lungs. And your land-dwelling reptiles are going to have a really concentrated waste product, which actually helps them conserve water. Their kidneys will try to filter out as much water that their body can reuse so that their waste is really, really concentrated. And they are going to have a closed circulatory system, and it will be a double loop system. The closed circulatory system does mean that they have blood vessels throughout their body. That blood will pass through carrying nutrients and oxygen to their cells. Reptiles will all have internal fertilization. That means that the male and female must mate and the eggs are fertilized inside of the mother's body. And most of our reptiles will then lay eggs. However, some will give birth to live young. And with our reptile eggs, they are quite special in the fact that they have a thicker shell on the outside. This thicker shell allows the reptiles to be able to live in environments that other animals like amphibians cannot, because the shell protects the egg from drying out, so a reptile does not have to lay their eggs near a water source. Now, with some of our reptiles, especially the crocodile, when the baby is born, the mother will actually care for its young. But then there are some reptiles, like the sea turtle, that mom comes up on land, she lays the eggs, and she will not see those babies again. They will be on their own to hatch and make their way to the ocean. And here, the top two pictures below are pictures of snake eggs. The first picture shows you how flexible they are. The shell is not hard like a chicken egg. And then the second picture on the top, the one on the right, shows a bunch of newly hatched baby snakes. And the picture at the bottom shows a newly hatched baby sea turtle. Now, with our reptiles, we do break them into groups. So the first two we're going to talk about are lizards and snakes. Lizards are usually going to have a more slender body, a longer tail, 4 legs, and a lot of them will have clawed toes. And most of our lizards will be insect eaters. However, there will be a few that do eat vegetation. And with our lizards, there are some adaptations that they have evolved to prevent becoming dinner to another larger animal. One would be camouflage. Camouflage is the ability to blend in with your surroundings. And there are even a few lizards, like our chameleon, that has evolved the ability to change colors to blend in with its surroundings. Other lizards can actually shed their tail so that they can get away from the predator, and they will actually then regrow or regenerate a new tail to replace the one that they have gotten rid of. In these two pictures, this shows camouflage. On the top, there's a little lizard that blends in very well with that rock. And then down below, the bottom picture shows a picture of a chameleon that has kind of changed his colors to blend in with that rocky background. Now, it's very obvious when we're looking at the picture to see these lizards, but if you were a larger bird hunting for dinner and you were flying up in the sky, these lizards would actually blend in very well and would not be an easy target. And then here's an example of lizards that are able to shed their tail. At the top right, that's a blue-tailed skink, and something has gone after it and it has actually shed its tail. And then the bottom picture shows a lizard actually regrowing its tail. It will be a slow process, but eventually it will regrow it, and one day it may have to shed it again. The neat thing is when the lizard first sheds its tail, the tail continues to twitch and wiggle for a little while, so the predator thinks it caught something to eat, but in reality it's just the tip of the tail while the rest of the lizard actually gets away. And then I have the little cartoon about the lizard bully pulling the tail off the other one. Snakes are going to have a very elongated body, and they are going to have no limbs. They will have no legs. Snakes are going to use the scales on their belly. You can see what they look like on the bottom right hand picture. They are elongated scales, and they will use those scales to help them get a grip on the ground so that they can move. These scales act kind of like the cleats on the bottom of a football player's shoe, so it helps them grip the surface that they're trying to crawl over. And they are going to be dry, cool, and smooth to the touch. They will not be slimy. The coolness that you feel when you touch a snake is because they are cold-blooded animals. And snakes have developed different ways to actually get their prey, which means their dinner. Some are going to be constrictors. They're going to squeeze their prey until it dies, and then they will eat it after that. Some are going to be venomous snakes. They're actually going to have fangs, and they will deliver a venom through their fangs that will either paralyze or kill their prey. And then we have some snakes that just feed. They will actually raid nests of birds, and they will feed off the eggs that they find in these nests. On the picture on the left shows a constrictor. This is a rock python eating a small deer. And the right side shows the fangs of a venomous snake. You can see this is a snake that's in mid-strike, and you can see those fangs there at the top. And some snakes, depending on the type, like to advertise that they are poisonous, like the coral snake on the left-hand picture. And a good way to remember, because you can see the bottom picture, there is a king snake that has the same colors as a coral snake. The coral snake is venomous, the king snake is not. But the king snake wants you to think he is so that you'll leave him alone. So there is a saying that will help you know the difference between a king snake and a coral snake. Red on black, venom lack. That means if the red band is touching black bands on the king snake, then it has no poison in it. Red on yellow, kill a fellow. So if you look at the top left picture, the red is touching two yellow stripes. That means he's poisonous and he would kill you if he bit you. Now, The top right-hand picture on this slide is showing a snake that is camouflaged. Some like to show that they're poisonous. Others like to hide away and are called ambush predators, where they stay hidden in the leaf litter on the ground and you can't even tell they're there. So when an unsuspecting animal comes along, they strike out and are able to get their dinner that way. Turtles, another group of reptiles, are going to have their body encased in a shell. The shell is made of plates of bone covered by a shield that is made of the same materials as your fingernails or the scales of scales of reptiles. And your turtles do not have teeth. Instead, they're going to have a beak very similar to birds. And there is a difference between your turtles and your tortoises. Turtles live better in the water. Tortoises live better on land. Turtles will have webbed feet, and your tortoises normally have kind of short, stubby legs with, broad, clawed feet on them. In these pictures, you see some are specialized. Your top left picture, that is a sea turtle, and its feet are going to be made more fin-like so it can swim. On the bottom, we have a picture of an alligator snapping turtle. His beak is going to be much stronger, and he also, on his tongue, has a little piece of flesh that looks like a worm. So when he's in the water, he opens his mouth and he wiggles that little piece of flesh that's on the tongue so that fish think that it's a worm. They swim up and try to grab it, and he chomps down on him and he gets dinner. The picture on the right, I wanted to show you that unlike the cartoons that you often see on TV where the turtle will take his shell off and set it to the side, that a turtle cannot do that. A turtle's backbone is actually attached to the inside of his shell. So you cannot just go up and take the shell off of a turtle. It will actually rip his back off. Your alligators and crocodiles are another group of reptiles. They are going to be large meat-eating reptiles. They're going to spend much of their time in the water to cool down, or they'll come up on the shore to warm up in the sun. They are going to have long snouts and powerful tails, and their scales are going to be much, much thicker. It's almost like armored skin. Now, the difference between your alligators and your crocodiles are shown below in the picture. Your alligators are going to have a wide, rounded snout, while your crocodiles are going to have a narrow, pointed snout. And crocodiles, as far as being wonderful parents, your crocodile is a wonderful mother. She will defend her babies to the death. The top picture here is a crocodile. The bottom picture is an alligator. And this cute little guy here is our last group of reptiles. He is called a tuatara. They are found only in New Zealand, and they are very prehistoric looking. They do have the raised scales on the head and the back. And what is neat about these little guys here, and kind of what sets them apart from the other lizards that we already talked about, is that your tuatara actually has a third tiny eye underneath the scale on its head. And scientists believe that that eye was actually used to influence their sleep and their hibernation patterns, and that it's not an eye that sees like their other ones, but one that detects the length of dark and light over the course of the days. Another way they differ from the lizards is that instead of one set of teeth on the top and one set of teeth on the bottom, he actually has 2 rows of teeth on the top and 1 on the bottom. And they do feed primarily on insects. Birds are our next group of vertebrates, and they are going to be our first warm-blooded group. This means that birds can actually make their own internal body heat, so they do not have to rely on the environment to warm up or cool down. Now, the definition of a bird is that it lays eggs and has feathers. You'll notice that in that definition it says nothing about being able to fly, because we do have birds that cannot fly. Now, the bodies of the birds, for the most part, are going to be adapted for flight. However, not all can fly. Birds are going to have feathers, and they're going to have hollow bones that are going to help them fly. The hollow bones make their bones lighter so that they can get up off the ground easier. Feathers are going to be made of dead cells, and same material as the reptile scales and same material as your fingernails and your hair. Feathers are going to have shapes that kind of determine what job they're going to do. The picture on the left shows contour feathers. These are going to be the largest type of feather, and they're going to be found on the wing and the outside part of the body. Your down feathers are going to be the picture on the right. These are going to be the short, fluffy feathers that are going to be right up against the body, and they're going to actually provide insulation, kind of like you would wear a jacket. They have these feathers to keep them insulated. Birds have beaks that are adapted for the type of food that they eat. If you look at the picture of the eagle, which is the top left picture, his beak is going to be sharp and curved, and birds that eat meat are going to have beaks like this. That curve, that sharp curve, allows them to tear and rip the meat into tiny little pieces so that they can feed off of them. The robin, which is the top right picture, has a long, thin beak, and this is going to be used to probe into the soil to get insects. And some of them, like your hummingbird that has the long, thin beak, will use it to get nectar from the flowers. The bottom picture is a cardinal, and it has a thick, blunt beak that is used for crushing the shells of seeds. Your birds are going to have a much more efficient respiratory system. In addition to lungs, they are going to have air sacs throughout their body, which is going to help air to be moved in one direction only. This makes it more efficient use of oxygen, and they need this because sometimes they can fly at very high heights, and the higher you go, the less oxygen, the lower the percentage of oxygen in the air. So they need to be able to use it as efficiently as possible. They are also going to have a double loop, closed circulatory system, just like our reptiles do. All birds will have internal fertilization. This means that the male and female must mate, and the female egg, or the egg, will be fertilized inside the female's body. The birds will then lay their eggs, which have a hard shell on the outside which protects the egg and prevents it from drying out. And then once the egg hatches, the parents will continue to protect and care for their young until they can fly off and fend for themselves. And we have 4 groups of birds. We have songbirds, waterfowl, flightless birds, and birds of prey. Your songbirds are going to be the ones that you hear making all the pretty sounds up in the trees, and you think that they're out there singing for you, but actually they're not. A lot of the sounds that the birds make are warnings to other birds to stay out of their territory. So here we have a yellow finch, we have a little bluebird up in a tree, and you can tell by their beaks. If you look closely at their beaks, you can see what type of foods they would eat. Here are 3 more examples of songbirds. At the top we have a sparrow, At the bottom we have the cute little chickadee, and on the right we have the robin. And again, if you look closely at their beaks, you can kind of see what foods they prefer to eat. Remember, long and thin, they're insect eaters, or short and blunt, they crush seeds. Your waterfowl are going to be birds that live near the water and feed off of vegetation or fish from the water sources. So examples of waterfowl would be ducks and geese, swans, pelicans, and flamingos are also examples of waterfowl. Our next group of birds are flightless birds. These are birds that are not going to be able to fly. Their wings have other purposes. Now, with our two birds here, we have the penguin. Its wings are used primarily now to help it swim in the water. The bottom picture is a kiwi. His wings have pretty much disappeared. He just has two little nubs. And your kiwi can be found in New Zealand. And our other two flightless birds are going to be the ostrich and the emu. And these are two very large birds that flight's just not possible for them. The last group is going to be our birds of prey. These are going to be the birds that have the sharp curved beak and feed off of other animals. The top here you can see a hawk, which has the unfortunate other little bird that it's feeding on underneath of his talons, his feet. And then in the bottom right picture we have an eagle. And two more examples of birds of prey. The top left picture is an osprey. They do live near water and feed solely off of fish. And then in the bottom right picture we have a vulture. And even though a vulture is not known to actually fly and grab their prey, they do have the sharp curved beak because they are scavengers, and when they find a dead carcass, a dead animal, they do need that beak to be able to rip and tear the flesh off to eat. Please do not forget to do the assessment that follows this video.